Hey, 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 it's Dr. Joe from Atlanta. Welcome to Your Wellness for Life. Happy Sunday, 2 days after Christmas. I just turned on some Christmas lights. I know some of my neighbors have already taken down their Christmas decorations. I'm not quite ready to say goodbye to Christmas. This is actually, the second day of the 12 days of Christmas. So I'm going to still hang in there and celebrate Christmas. Now, next week, it's Sunday night. We're going to be heading into New Year's week, and lots of you will be making New Year's resolutions. That'll be kind of cool. We'll talk about that when that time comes up. Recently, been talking a lot about children. Yesterday, talking about activities for children. Probably still on vacation, winter break, looking for things to do. And my suggestion yesterday, the theme was to take them on a virtual vacation. Today, we're going to talk about children and fears. Now, we are living in a very unique time. And the title here is All Fears in Children, Real or Imagined, Deserve Attention. I just made a post that fears tend to be age dependent. When you're younger, you have slightly different fears than if you're older. And the difference is when you're older, you tend to have developed coping mechanisms. So adults can kind of deal with fears better than younger children, especially under the age of 12 and especially under the age of 5. So we'll talk about that. But what is fear? Fear is an unpleasant feeling triggered by the perception of danger, real or imagined. Now, not all fear is bad. You can imagine that it's a mechanism that's built into us to avoid dangerous things. So if you're driving too fast and the road conditions are bad, they're icy or cold, rainy, and visibility is bad, your better sense is telling you to slow down or maybe even stop because you should be fearful of an accident. So that's actually a good fear. Most other fears tend to be kind of imagined, and adults have very unique fears, although we're not going to be focusing on them. But adults fear things like criticism, poverty, old age and dying, failure, offending others, looking foolish, and even success. So those are unique fears of adults. And there's a very famous saying that Franklin D. Roosevelt said in 1933 in his inaugural speech, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." It was in the middle of a bad depression, the Great Depression, and people were losing jobs. It was a very difficult time, and it was very uplifting to say things like that. Nothing to fear but fear itself. Now, we are living in our unique, fearful times. We've got a pandemic. We've got a new administration coming in. We're going to have all these changes, and some people are fearful, and some children are fearful above and beyond their normal fears. And some children are actually tuning into this whole pandemic thing and fearful of what might be happening to their parents. Is my parent going to get sick? Are they going to be in the hospital? Heard you can't visit them in the hospital. People are dying from it. So these are fears that a lot of children are dealing with, and they may not be coming right out and expressing it. And whether a fear is pathological or not really depends on several things. And yes, the younger fears, you tend to outgrow them. But even some of those fears in adults, whenever you have the following four things, you probably should seek out some professional help. So if your fear is extreme or past the age of where you normally have a fear of a dog or darkness and things like that. Number two, if your child is very upset or has tantrums, and especially even if adults are very fearful of something, it may be pathologic. Number three, if your child is afraid of doing things like going to school, sleeping alone, or being apart from you. And number four, if your child has physical symptoms or even adults that are more panic-like, they're having panic attacks, stomach aches, headaches, racing heart, short of breath, dizzy, or sick. Those are four signs that you probably should seek out professional help. Before we get into some guidelines, I've got 5 guidelines to deal with fear of any age. Let's talk about some unique fears that are age specific. Now, I'm an obstetrician. I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not a pediatric psychiatrist, but I've delivered lots of babies, and I've had lots of families bring their children in, and we've had lots of interesting discussions about children and their fears. And the first thing that I notice, or the advice I give them, especially my new moms, is that your new infant really wants a very consistent environment. They don't want to be switched around. They want a predictable routine. They want to minimize the different caretakers. They want to bond with their parents and bond with their mothers. So you want to try to avoid lots of changes in a newborn because they will let you know they don't like this changes. So, and infants and toddlers up to the age of 3, so toddlers 1 through 3, they have these fears of loud noises and sudden movements. They don't like large looming objects. Even if it's a nice big teddy bear, they may scare them. They're fearful of strangers. It's called separation anxiety. They identify with their parents and anybody else. They're normally going to be kind of fearful of that, and that's actually a good thing. Um, and they don't like changes in the house. And so there's some unique fears that infants and toddlers have. Moving on to preschool age kids, so age 3 to 5, they tend to have fears like of the dark and noises at night, masks. What are we doing now? Everyone's wearing masks. Can you imagine how fearful some of these kids are and even wearing it? I've heard of parents having trouble getting their kids to wear the mask. And so you have to come up with some kind of a game or story to explain why they need to wear this uncomfortable thing. Kids at that age are also afraid of monsters and ghosts. I remember growing up, we used to visit a family in New Jersey, and this older guy, his name was Harry, and there was a closet in the living room. We had to sleep on cushions because they didn't have enough bedrooms. And he always, when the lights were turned down, he always said, "Watch out, the boogeyman's behind that door." And we always, every time we visited them, we were worried about the boogeyman coming out of that door. So sometimes, adults and older children, they love to scare younger kids, and you need to put a stop to that. And then also, a lot of preschool age kids are afraid of animals, especially a dog. And it doesn't have to be a big dog, because sometimes these little dogs, these little lap dogs, they tend to be very yappy and can scare little kids. So you got to be careful of that. And you have to work through those fears. And then the school age kids go age 6 to 12. So the preteens, they start having fears that are more adult like. I don't like snakes. I don't mind spiders, but I don't like snakes. And I don't like storms and natural disasters. I'm okay with being at home alone, but a lot of kids between age 6 and 12 aren't quite ready for that yet. Some kids fear a teacher who's angry at them for not doing their schoolwork. And I was reading in the paper today that with COVID-19, a lot of teachers have noticed that schoolwork has gone down. And a lot of kids have voiced their opinion and said, they miss their teacher, they miss the classroom, they miss their friends. And so that we'll see what that effect is going to have on them as they get older. Probably not good, but anyway. Kids also, age 6 to 12, start listening to the news and watch TV shows that may be kind of scary. And you watch the news. A lot of them have iPhones now, and they're looking at their news feeds, and there's one scary thing after another. And you probably need to minimize that or work through that. And then some kids, are worried of injury, illness, especially COVID-19. They're afraid of their parents getting sick. They don't really like doctors. I don't blame them. They don't like going to doctors because they remember they got shots or vaccinations there. And some of them may actually have even experienced some death in the family, and they're not quite ready to cope with things like that. And then some school-age kids, 6 to 12, also fear failure and rejection. And then when you look at teenagers, they tend to know everything, but they also have their fears, and it's unique to the teen years. So I have 5 general guidelines to work through fears regardless of any age, but this is probably mostly focused on children. So number one, take the fear seriously. Don't try to ignore it. Don't try to talk your child out of it. Don't try to talk your child of being talk them out of being afraid. You do need to take their fear seriously, even if it's a very imagined. You think it's a ridiculous fear. Don't ignore it. And you yourself need to stay calm. So this is number two. Stay calm and confident. I mean, if you're in a storm, your children will pick up very quickly that you are fearful. So you need to be an adult and you need to be calm and confident. And so it's not just how you talk to them, but it's also what you say. But the important thing is communicate with them and talk. Communication is the answer to everything. And number three, find out what feels comfortable with them. Avoid a total, out or complete avoidance. Boost their realistic thinking. And number four, practice a coping response. Now, children don't really have a lot of coping skills yet, but we as adults have them. We can be kind of creative and imaginative with them. You want to try to distract them, and you can use things like drawing or maybe acting with stuffed animals, do some role playing, and that obviously depends on the age of the child. And the fifth thing, a general guideline to work through fears, is to reward their efforts in getting over their fears. No matter how small the fear was that you worked through, reward them, congratulate them, and be supportive of them. So those are the 5 general guidelines, regardless of any age, but especially for children, to work through fears. Take the fear seriously. Don't try to talk your child out of it. Stay calm and be confident. Find out what feels comfortable with them. Practice coping responses and reward their efforts of getting over their fears. I hope you found this helpful. I have 3 other sources that might be of interest to you if you have children working through fears. One is how to help your child manage a fear. Next one, 7 ways to help a child with fear. And another one, 8 ways to help your child overcome their fears. So if that is of any interest to you and that resonates with you, you need that, send me a comment, send me a message. I'll be happy to fire that off to you. So on that note, I wish you a wonderful Sunday evening. We're going to be heading into New Year's week. And don't forget, we're still in the Christmas season. And I wish you a wonderful Sunday evening. And God bless. See you tomorrow.